For generations, the journalistic ideal was that of a detached observer, an impartial scribe sitting in the gallery, taking notes on the actions of the powerful and delivering them to the public without fear or favour. But a new breed of journalists and broadcasters is rewriting that old playbook. They're realising that in the era of institutional inertia and journalistic cowardice, simply documenting a crisis is no longer enough. To effect real change, they have to step into the arena and actively hold power to account, using the full weight of their personal platform and professional experience to force a resolution. Let me give you an example. The American investigative journalist and legal analyst Katie Phang is effectively waging a one-woman war against the US Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. Phang hasn't merely just written scathing columns about the Department of Justice's failure to fully release the Jeffrey Epstein files under the transparency laws mandated by Congress. Instead, she's filed a federal lawsuit directly naming Blanche as a defendant. And what makes Phang such a formidable adversary is that she isn't just an outsider hurling criticisms. She speaks from a position of deep authority. Armed with a formidable legal background, she understands the mechanics of statutory deadlines, unlawful redactions, and compliance failures better than most. She's using her considerable profile not just to describe a cover-up, but to legally oppose it. She's transitioned from a commentator into an active litigating force for accountability. And that brings us closer to home, and to a document that deserves to be read by every single person with a stake in the British demolition and construction industry. It's an open letter sent to the Construction Leadership Council by Andy Stevens, the founder and CEO of the Build Network UK. Like Katie Phang, Andy Stevens is a broadcaster who's looked at institutional failure and decided that a passive reporting of it is a luxury that the industry simply cannot afford. His letter is a blistering, unsparing assault on the CLC's newly launched Joint Code of Practice on mental health in construction. And Stevens' intervention is so powerful because, like Phang, he speaks from a position of experience. He has lived the dark reality that this code purports to address. He writes openly of his own past suicide attempt, of knowing what it feels like to be in that place of complete isolation. And when a man who's been to the brink tells you that a policy document will not save the men and women currently dying in the trade, you listen. In a just, properly functioning world, it shouldn't fall to independent journalists and broadcasters to point out these massive structural shortcomings. The institutions themselves should possess the competence and empathy to see them. Yet Stevens has had to meticulously dissect the code to expose a staggering truth. While the document correctly identifies a suicide rate in construction that's nearly 4 times the national average, its practical action points are entirely directed at Tier 1 contractors, massive corporate clients, and asset owners blessed with HR departments and legal teams. You've got to ask, how can an organisation called the Construction Leadership Council show so little genuine leadership or understanding of the very sector it claims to guide? Over 99% of the construction business in this country are micro businesses and SMEs. Fully 37% of the entire workforce is self-employed. These are the brickies, the sparkies, the chippies, and the ground workers who keep the lights on and who build the nation. Yet, as Andy Stevens points out with devastating clarity, not a single case study in the entire 140-page document comes from a business with fewer than 50 employees. Not one. The CLC has written a code for the corporate world that they know, entirely ignoring the sprawling, fragmented industry that is actually suffering. They've ignored the sole traders who have no HR department to turn to when the pressure builds, no legal teams to manage their risk, and no corporate buffer when they're driving 2 hours to a cancelled job or chasing a homeowner for final payment. And that oversight becomes even more damning when you look at the tokenistic lip service consideration given to certain demographics within the trade. The code devotes a mere page and a half to neurodiversity, In an industry where 1 in 4 workers self-identifies as neurodivergent without once naming ADHD, dyslexia or autism, let alone offering practical solutions. Similarly, the focus on female workers is virtually non-existent, completely ignoring critical health factors like perimenopause that impact retention and well-being. A migrant and foreign-born workforce are dismissed with a vague instruction to communicate in different languages. There's no acknowledgement of the profound mental toll caused by language barriers, cultural isolation, or the unique anxieties of immigration-linked job insecurity. And when the Build Network UK invited the chair of the CLC Mental Health Working Group to appear on to discuss these glaring omissions, she declined, hiding behind the need for corporate press office approval. Other members of the CLC Working Group chose to block Build Network on social media simply for asking questions. That's not leadership. That's a closed shop. It's cowardice. Journalism is at its best when it refuses to be polite in the face of institutional failure. By issuing a public 14-day ultimatum to the CLC to suspend the code and form a genuinely representative panel that includes sole traders and SME owners, Andy Stevens has crossed the line from reporter to advocate. Much like Katie Phang in America, he's proving that when leadership fails, it's the broadcasters with the courage, the platform, and the lived experience who must step up to steer the ship. Now, the timing of both the Katie Phang lawsuit and Andy Stevens' open letter to the CLC is also telling. There is an insidious disease quietening newsrooms today, and its name is access. In the United States, this manifests as an inherent and unbecoming cowardice among sections of the White House press corps. There's a palpable fear that truly honest, unvarnished reporting on the Trump administration will result in a revoked press pass or a ruined career. Editors and reporters pull their punches just so they can remain in the room. In very different arenas and under very different circumstances, we see the exact same malaise affecting the UK construction trade press. There's a deep systemic reluctance among many industry publications to say what so desperately needs to be said. Instead, there's a comfortable, profitable desire to say precisely what the powerful want them to say. When your business model relies on the patronage of corporate advertisers and official bodies, rocking the boat looks less like a public service and more like commercial suicide. And that's why the actions of Katie Phang and Andy Stevens are so radical and so brave. Both have chosen to weaponize their voices despite the immense personal and professional jeopardy in doing so. Katie Phang isn't reporting on the Justice Department. She's suing the Attorney General. She's effectively burnt the bridge of cosy institutional access in exchange for a pursuit of the absolute truth regarding the Epstein files. Andy Stevens has looked at the body supposed to represent his industry and he's called them out for running a closed shop. In a sector where critics are quickly frozen out, he has put his own standing on the line. They've both recognised that access is entirely worthless if the price of admission is your own integrity. By demanding a 14-day response and calling for an immediate suspension of a flawed code, Stevens is doing exactly what Phang is doing in a federal court, refusing to let corporate spin dictate human reality. They're proving that true journalism isn't about maintaining access to the powerful. It's about having the courage to stand outside the door and tell the truth about what's happening within.